On this week's Hockey Inside Out, did Claude Julien's mouth get him into trouble, and a ref tells Brendan Gallagher to go f*** himself? Welcome to this week's Hockey Inside Out, which is brought to you by Madison's New York Grill and Bar in downtown Montreal on Drummond Street. That's the one across the street from the Bell Center. Your home away from home for Canadiens road games. Okay, joining us today once again is former NHL player Rick Green, CBC Daybreak's Jessica Resnack, and with us for the first time from the radio, TSN 690's Simon Salikas. Thanks for coming by, Simon.
Thank you.
During last Saturday's 4-3 overtime loss to the Dallas Stars, the referee somehow missed calling several blatant infractions committed by the Stars, which included a hooking, a slashing, and a high stick to Max Domi's face. There's a filthy joke in there somewhere, but I'm not allowed. One can't help but wonder if this was the game where the refs decided to seek their revenge on Claude Julien for his open criticisms of the officiating during past games, or was this just a case of too many honest mistakes? What do you think?
I think it was just a horribly officiated game, and I don't blame Claude Julien for after the game to voice his frustration about it. He did say that he felt it was important for him to come to the defense of his players and stand up, and if there is a time to make a stand against the NHL, that's it. The fact that he got fined $10,000 I think is a little bit ridiculous when everyone has been comparing it to what Zdeno Chara got for cross-checking Brendan Gallagher in the throat. But I think this should have been a game that the NHL looked back on and gave some kind of statement about, because anyone watching, even if you're watching hockey for the first time, it was very obvious that the refs definitely mismanaged this game.
I think you can miss a hooking call or maybe even a tripping call, but when Max Domi is running around the ice and he's holding his face and he's bleeding, and there's two guys on the ice too, right? There's two officials that can make that call. The slash across Kovalchuk's stick, it breaks. That's been called all the time. It's always called. The Armia in overtime, a little bit of a bump. I think Armia was trying to sell that. But the other two, I think, are just, reffing 101. Those are easy calls to make.
And it's just been inconsistent for the whole year. I mean, the topic of conversation after every game can be, did you see the call that he made? Did you see the call that he didn't make? And you don't know what you get each and every night. So, they have to get and find a way to establish some consistency in the rules and enforce them. But that was really unfortunate what they did on Saturday, and Claude was right on when he said that it was a disgrace on the work that they did, and hopefully the Martin will be held accountable for it, because you can't have that type of refereeing moving forward.
Do you think it's over? Do you think they'll revisit the issue and the NHL will make a statement, or it's too late now?
I think the referees, they're supervisors that are watching them each and every game, and they do have meetings with them, and they talk about what kind of job they did or didn't do. And I think when you see an exhibition like that there's no question that they had some meetings with them, and as far as how they handle him moving forward is a good question.
Yeah, after the game, Brendan Gallagher had a heated discussion with referee Dean Morton, who he clearly told Gallagher to go F himself. Is this inappropriate behavior in the NHL, or just something that's commonplace in today's NHL?
Well, I think that it was poor judgment by the referee to have that confrontation with Gallagher. It's heated. Everybody knows what's on the line. And unlike days before, the referees basically walked away from it. They just didn't want to have that confrontation. But even before that, they would try and establish some rules, if you will, on their ability to communicate and discuss what goes on in the game, so that the referees could basically control the game and not lose control like they did with the confrontation with Gallagher.
Well, I think Gallagher was in the wrong there. I think he made a point of making sure that happened at center ice, that happened at the end of the game. I'll use the baseball comparable. If you get a bad pitch against you, you stand in the batter's box, you say something into your gloves to the extent that it wasn't a good pitch. Umpire doesn't have a problem with that. You step out of the box, you challenge him, you look at him, you're showcasing yourself. You're trying to make him look bad. I don't think that's going to help you. And every time I've told somebody to go F themselves, it's not, hey, good morning, Simon, how you doing? Go F yourself. It's something escalated to that. And Brendan Gallagher said something that the referee had enough of. And the only thing that I can think of, because nobody's gotten the story that what actually Brendan Gallagher said is, the one thing officials will not tolerate is you question their integrity. Are you on the take? How much did Gary Bettman pay you to, and that is going to get a reaction from a ref. Being told he's lazy or he's blind or he can't see or he can't keep up with the pace, that's par for the course. But I think Brendan Gallagher probably said something to the referee that triggered him.
But I think it's the referee's job to try and keep that cool head at that moment, that you can't let your emotions get the best of you. And this is not really a very good look for the NHL. It probably happens a lot throughout a game, but it's not caught on camera and being caught on camera like that. And I think there should have been some kind of damage control done by the NHL with the referees to say, you know what, I lost my cool at that moment and I apologize for it. But the fact that nothing has been said, I think, is the disappointing part of it.
And I also think the coaches have to be careful on their reaction behind the bench. The referees do not want to be put in a situation where they zoom in on the coach making these faces and throwing his arms up, and something that for the longest time they never liked to see happen. And you have to really be careful. As much as you would like to show your disapproval, you cannot get carried away behind the bench and have them zoom in on you and basically reading your lips on what the call was made by the referee.
And if Shea Weber was playing that game and he had that conversation with the ref at the end of the game, that's not the way it played itself out.
I agree. Yeah. Talk about a game that both the Canadiens and the NHL would probably like to forget. On Tuesday night, the Canadiens gave up another lead, this time a 2-goal lead, and lost 4-3 versus Detroit. How do you explain the countless blown leads that the team has endured this season and the fact that they got swept by the NHL's worst team?
I think it's hard for us to sit here and try and explain it when the captain of the team, Shea Weber, couldn't even explain it after the game. It's perhaps a loss of confidence. It's now the 8th time this season that they've blown a 2-goal lead going into the third period, that the players keep saying, we have to find a way to figure this out, but they haven't been able to find the answers. And I think it's just, this is how the season's been going, that you kind of have to just try and focus on next year, that you can't fix the problem this year. And I think a lot of the players are just getting frustrated and maybe trying to do too much, and that's why that they just don't have the answer as to what happened.
And I think they are fragile, just speaking from, the previous losses. They end up maybe holding back. They end up doing things that they normally shouldn't be doing, and it ends up changing the momentum and giving the opposition a chance to get on the scoreboard. And it's unfortunate. I've been there before, and it's almost like they're playing to lose instead of, showing the confidence that they need to have to win. And it's not an easy thing to correct, and it's obviously a problem with the team so far.
I think you could break down the game in several ways, but when I'm watching that game yesterday, there's 20 minutes left in that hockey game, and just classic hockey. If you're a coach, your best players have to be your best players, and the Canadiens' best players weren't their best players. Philip Deneau could have been better. Shea Weber's got the bad foot, but he's playing, so he's healthy, he's out there. And at some points, Carey Price has to take over, and if he can't take over a hockey game, then you need to take over 20 minutes of hockey versus not, you said a bad hockey team. They're not bad, they're historically bad. They're one of the worst teams in NHL history. You got to find a way to lock that down for 20 minutes.
Yeah, what I can't understand about this team is the fact that on paper and individually they seem to have a lot of good players. They also seem to have good chemistry, and they seem to get along and have a lot of fun on the ice, but they have trouble playing a full 60 minutes. And so much to the degree that it's shocking how they've blown so many leads, and I can't figure it out at this point.
Well, when I look at how they've blown the leads and the way that they're handling it, the first thing that comes to mind to me is they play much more of a high-risk type play on the defensive side. If I saw once, I probably saw 4 times where they ended up giving odd man rushes, and it's just a matter of time before you're going to pay for that. And I think it has to be a lesson learned that, when you have a lead, especially with their track record, you have to be a little more selective on your decisions offensively. Maybe you need to pull back a little bit and protect the defensive part of the game more to get you through this tough time. And I don't see that happening. I see a lot of the guys are on the offensive side of the play when they should be on the defensive side. The end result is obviously their scoring chance or or goals against that's killing them right now.
I'm realizing that all the questions I have to ask you guys today are very depressing, but this past week was very important for the Canadiens. They played 4 games. They lost all 4, 3 to very good teams, 1 to a middle-of-the-road team. Do you think it's time for Marc Bergevin to give up on his reset and blow up the team?
Well, I just don't know what his reset is. That what he's been doing year after year has not worked with this team. This team's about to miss the playoffs for the 3rd straight year. They've only made the playoffs once in 5 years. That whatever he's doing to try and make this team a better team, a playoff team, and maybe even a Stanley Cup contending team is not working. So why not just blow up this team? Instead of trying to do these little shortcuts of using words like retooling, and just do a whole rebuild. Just say, you know what, unfortunately, the system that we have right now is not going to give us success. So let's get back to the basics, put a good foundation. It's going to take some years, but it's not like Habs fans haven't been disappointed for the last little while, because they haven't had any sort of thing to cheer for in the last little while.
I agree with you. The reset button is not working, and the time is now to really seriously look at your core guys. In order for you to get better, I think you have to start to look at changing some of your key players. The only way you're going to get something back is obviously give up something. But as we've consistently seen over this year, the key guys, aside from the Gallagher and the Weber and, even Carey for that matter, are getting the job done. But the other guys, even Tatar is doing fine. But you have to change your core guys, and you have to find a way to change it up, because it's not working with what they have now. And I think that it's time to make changes, to make major changes.
What's interesting about this summer and the next summer is because you have the Canadiens' best players are all up for contracts, right? We know about Petrie and Tatar, but then Gallagher is due for his contract. So reset, rebuild, fine, but you have to do it right. I keep Carey Price because I still think when you put a decent blue line in front of him, he's the league's best goalie. But you have to take calls on everybody else, and that includes Brendan Gallagher, because in 16, 17 months from now, you're going to have to make a decision. 7, 8 more years at $7-8 million with Brendan Gallagher. He's 30-ish. He'll be at least almost 30, and where the NHL is trending right now, it's the Marners and the Ahos and all these young players and Laine, you get paid in your early to mid 20s. That's where the money's being made right now. That's the way the NHL is trending. So these are difficult decisions. So if you just want to trade Tatar and Petrie, that's fine, but that's not a reset, that's not a rebuild. A rebuild is you pick your core piece, if it's Carey Price, great, then everybody else needs to be assessed. You got to take calls on everybody, and that includes a very popular Brendan Gallagher, but that is the reality.
I'm also curious to know how Carey Price truly feels about this, because last year at the season-ending press conference, he said, I want to win, and I want to win now. And then you come back the next year and you have a year that is not an improvement. That how is Carey Price feeling? He's going to be 33 years old. He's no longer the young player anymore, that he's starting to see that retirement is not in the near future, but it is getting closer. He's closer to retirement than he is to his rookie years.
Sorry, I was going to say, and the reason why these guys play the game is ultimately to win the Stanley Cup. And as they get older and their career gets on, if they don't have a sense or a feel that they have an opportunity moving forward, then they have to make a real decision on, okay, where can I go? Am I allowed to give a team where I think I have a chance to win and possibly get the ultimate Stanley Cup championship?
But I wonder if it's really possible, because you guys just named a bunch of players that the Canadiens should keep that are older players. And they have a bunch of prospects or rookies or sophomore players that they're not going to trade either. So there's a bunch of middle-of-the-road players. What can you really get for these guys anyways? I mean, on Tuesday, the Canadiens traded Marco Scandella for a pair of draft picks, so Marc Bergevin is trying to do something. Who would you like to see traded before the trade deadline?
Well, I think the player that would give you the most value right now would be Thomas Tatar. And you're going to have to look and see, is this a player that you want to part with, and what can you get in return? So that would be a player that I think you could get your best value for. I think Max Domi is another player, but I don't necessarily think his stock is as high as like a Thomas Tatar player.
And I think you really have to look at all options. You have to put all of your players out there and say, okay, what can we get back? What can we do as an organization to find improvement in any area that we can. And I don't think that you have to hold on to all of your guys. If something was to come along and say, this makes sense, let's do it moving forward so that we become a better team and put better guys in the dressing room that's going to allow them some success.
I think you got to forecast. If you think you're going to be good again in 3-4 years, then you start doing the math on players who are 29 and 30 years old. I don't think you sign up for a Tatar. And even like I said before, Brendan Gallagher is a giant question mark going forward. If you're going to make that transition to go young, then you make that transition to go young. And the oldest guy on the team might be a guy like Danault or Drouin in their mid-20s. And you see how far they can take you. But at that point, you'll stockpile draft picks and maybe you make the free agent acquisition. I don't know. But right now, if you're about to miss the playoffs for 4 out of the last 5 years, doesn't matter if it's the Canadiens or the Leafs or any team in the National Hockey League, you take calls on everybody.
But don't you need some veterans? I mean, come on, that's the first I've ever heard about the possibility of trading or opening up Brendan Gallagher for a trade.
Well, Philip Danault, if you keep Brendan Gallagher for one more year, then Philip Danault is on his 5th year. At what point aren't you a rookie anymore? Like Philip Danault has done his 82 games, and he finished 5th or 6th in Selke Trophy. He's been around Carey Price. He's been around Shea Weber. At what point do I need?
Gallagher is the captain in waiting. That's blasphemy, son.
That's fine. But tell me a player that right now, if I ask you one player that can give me 2 first-round picks on the Canadiens,
Is it Brendan Gallagher? 2 first-round picks?
It's not Arturi Lehkonen. It's not Yoel Armia. There's one guy that can go and get you that King's ransom.
And even then, those are gambles. All the draft picks are.
Absolutely.
Gallagher, he's not that old, and he's proven.
Yeah, I know. And listen, when we talk about rebuild, that's step 1. Getting your drafts right, developing, getting free agents. There's so many steps about just rebuilding. Like the Florida Panthers have been bad for 20 years. They have Huberdeau, they have Barkov, they have Ekblad who won a Rookie of the Year. So if the Canadiens are bad for the next 3 years, do you think you're going to draft a Barkov, a Huberdeau, and a Rookie of the Year? That's hard to do, and they're still not in a playoff picture. So rebuild is step number 1. I think you need to load up on assets right now. That's all you can do.
All right, well, that is all the time that we have for this week's show, which has been brought to you by Madison's New York Grill and Bar in downtown Montreal on Drummond Street. That's the one across the street from the Bell Center, where you can wait out the traffic and enjoy their $10 specials after every Canadiens game. Is it time for a complete rebuild, or should the Canadiens stay the course? Let us know in the comments section below. My name is Adam Susser, and we'll see you back here next Thursday.